Hey, family. Another day to get better. This is the second video on the basic myths about criminals. So, in the last video, the article started out explaining that in 1957, the musical West Side Story, Stephen Sondheim, and I said duplicated, but what was in here, it said parodied, Parodied. So, after reading this in the last video, I read a little further into it, and then I searched up that word, and basically, the West Side Story, that musical, was basically mocking the current day thinking back then about juvenile delinquency, and um, so yeah, it was kind of like rebutting, like we're product of our circumstances and this and that. So it kind of took me back to what my belief system was and everything before I started to change my way of behaving and thinking and everything. And I used to, think um, I was a product of my circumstances. Yeah, I was in and out of foster homes. I was poor, this and that. And it kind of gave me reasons and excuses for being the way that I was. So that's why I think that that's the reason that I was given this in my treatment program, was to help me overcome that type of thinking. But I'm going to continue on reading this, but I have to get my reading glasses real quick. But yeah, so I've probably seen the West Side Story before. I should probably watch it again just to see and compare it to what this says, but I'm not sure if these these criminal acts that they were talking about in here are actually stuff that took place in that musical or what. But so I'm gonna pick up where I left off last video and get through this. But we left off in the last video about how economic troubles are also seen as contributing to crime by forcing mothers to go to work, further weakening the family. Their children have less supervision and guidance than before and are even more vulnerable to peer pressure. That's where I left off in the last video. I'm picking up right there. Sociological explanations for crime, plausible as they may seem, are simplistic. If they were correct, we'd have far more criminals than we do. Criminals come from all kinds of families and neighborhoods. Most poor people are law-abiding, and most kids from broken homes are not delinquents. Children may bear the scars of neglect and deprivation for life, but most do not become criminals. The environment does not have an effect, but people perceive and react to similar conditions of life very differently. The environment does, it says the environment does have an effect, but people perceive and react to similar conditions of life very differently. A family may reside in a neighborhood where gangs roam the streets and where drugs are as easy to come by as cigarettes. The father may have deserted and the mother collect welfare, yet not all the children in that family are in crime. In suburbia, a family may be close emotionally and well off financially, but that is not enough to keep one of the youngsters from using drugs, stealing, and destroying property. Criminals claim that they were rejected by parents, neighbors, schools, and employers, but rarely does a criminal say why he was rejected. Even as a young child, he was sneaky and defiant, and the older he grew, the more he lied to his parents, stole and destroyed their property, and threatened them. He made life at home unbearable as he turned even innocuous requests into a battleground. He conned his parents to get whatever he wanted, or else he wore them down through endless argument, it was the criminal who rejected his parents rather than vice versa. Not sure if this is portraying what went on in the video in the play, the musical, West Side Story. But I'm assuming that's what it is. This is also, I forgot to state that. So this is an article by Stanton E. Samenow. And it's mocking the way people saw juvenile delinquency and criminal behavior back in the 50s. So not only did he reject his family, but he rejected the kids in the neighborhood who acted responsibly. He considered them uninteresting, their lives boring. He gravitated to more adventurous youngsters, many of who were older than he. Crime is not contagious like chickenpox. Even in crime-infested neighborhoods, there are youngsters who want no part of the action. Sure, there is the desire to belong to the crowd, but the question is, which crowd? Criminals were not forced into crime by other people. They chose the companions they liked and admired. The school does not reject the antisocial youngster until he is impossible to deal with. Many criminals have no use for school whatsoever. Still, some remain in school, then use their education to gain entry into circles where they find new victims. More commonly, delinquent youngsters use the classroom as an arena for criminal activity by fighting, lying, stealing, and engaging in power plays against teachers and other pupils. Basically, for them, school is boring. Its requirements stupid, the subjects meaningless. Just as the criminal rejects his parents, he does the same to his teachers. It is neither incompetent teachers nor an irrelevant curriculum that drives him out. In fact, the school may offer him an individually tailored program, but no matter what he is offered, it does not suit him. Finally, he is expelled for disruptive behavior or grows so bored that he quits. The notion that people become criminals because they are shut out of the job market is absurdity. In the first place, most unemployed people are not criminals. More to the point, perhaps, is that many criminals do not want to work. They may complain that without skills they can't find employment. Of course, it was their choice not to remain in school to acquire those skills. But as many a probation officer will observe, in most areas jobs of some sort are available, but criminals find them too menial and beneath them. Some criminals are highly educated and successful at their work. Their very success may serve as a cover for crime. If a person has a solid work record, he is generally regarded as responsible and stable. But money, recognition, and power are not enough to make a criminal law-abiding. The point is that what a person's environment offers is not decisive in his becoming a criminal. The media have been criticized for making crime enticing by glorifying both specific crimes and criminals. There has been intense concern about the high incidence of violence in television programs that reach children. Neither specific studies nor congressional hearings have shed much light on how much the media contribute to crime. Once again arises the erroneous premise that human character is easily shaped by external events. Television does not make a criminal out of a child, nor does movies, comics, magazines, or books. A person already thinking about committing crimes may pick up ideas from the media or become more certain about the feasibility of a particular crime. In parentheses, it says, note the rash of skyjackings following extensive publicity about them during the 70s. But a responsible person will not be turned into a criminal by what he watches or reads. Economic adversity affects us all. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. So it says a responsible person will not be turned into a criminal by what he watches or reads. So me and my brother back in the day when we were teenagers, we watched a movie where they made Molotov cocktails and were lighting them on fire and throwing them. And from that, me and my brother went and got some empty beer bottles, filled them up with soap and gasoline, and put rags in them. And we went outside and we lit them and we threw them. So I don't know. I guess this could be a debatable article here. Everybody probably has their own perception or opinion on it, but I'm just reading it, exposing you to the information. You do what you want to with it, and but yeah, economic adversity affects us all. We may be pushed to work longer hours or to take a second job. Women who prefer to be at home may have little choice but to go to work. Families may have to make do with less and watch goals slip further out of reach, and people on fixed incomes bear a special burden. The responsible person responds to economic pressures by sacrifice and hard work. Even for him, temptation may be stronger to step outside the law as the economic squeeze tighter. Ultimately, however, it comes down to how each person chooses to deal with adversity. And then again, if you grew up in an environment where you were not taught that you can sacrifice and work hard and have a choice to act in ways where you can overcome adversity, you don't know that's a possibility. At least in my specific situation, like the topic of my channel is, I heard that you can only grow to what you're exposed to. And if you're not exposed to somebody letting you know that there is other ways to live, that this isn't how life is, and it's all you know, then it's all you do, in my opinion. What of the observation that a disproportionate number of people incarcerated for crimes are both poor and from minority groups? It says, what about the observation that a disproportionate number of people incarcerated for crimes are both poor and from minority groups? This is less a commentary on those groups than on the processes by which the criminal justice system arrests, adjudicates, and confines. If a white upper middle class youngster is arrested for shoplifting, his parents may hire a lawyer and get the charges dropped by promising that the boy will visit a counselor. He never sees the inside of a courtroom and his record is clean. The black kid may become a criminal justice statistic. He goes to court, is convicted, then sentenced to a term of probation, and has a criminal record. For a more serious crime, the person with money and connections may get probation while the disadvantaged offender is imprisoned. Perhaps we need to examine the system by which people end up behind bars rather than focus on their color or economic status. It is unwarranted and racist to assume that because a person is poor and black, brown, red, yellow, he is inadequate to cope with his environment and therefore can hardly help but become a criminal. So far, I have contended that criminals are not mentally ill or helpless victims of oppressive social conditions. So the musical West Side Story must have portrayed that criminals are mentally ill, helpless victims of oppressive social conditions. And basically, this article is somebody is contending that way of thinking. arguing it. So, but the psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, and social workers would say that a person is what he is largely because of his early experiences. They regard a man's crimes as symptoms of conflicts that are rooted in childhood and remain unresolved. Too long have the social sciences promulgated the view that a human organism comes into the world like a lump of clay to be shaped by external forces. This view renders us all victims. And that's one thing that's what they taught me in the program, that I was playing victim stance, that I was living the role of the victim, using those circumstances from childhood as my excuse and to partake in the behaviors that I was partaking in. And I had to accept that. And then, you know what? I decided to choose, you know what? I will not. Yeah, that stuff might have happened to me. That might have been how my childhood was. I might have been in and out of foster homes, in the juvenile penitentiary system, in the jails and adult penitentiary. But that doesn't mean that the rest of my life has to be that way. Like I say in every video, just because we've done something so long does not mean we have to continue to do it. And that's where it comes in, seeing your belief systems, the way you see things. And if it's not getting where you want to go, you can challenge it, you identify it, you remove it, and you replace it with some positive, self-affirming beliefs that moves you closer to getting better every day, to becoming the person we were supposed to be, or that we know we can be. But where are we at? This view renders us all victims. What it does accomplish is to make explanation of behavior relatively easy. If any of us had taken a criminal path, something could be found in our past to explain why we turned out as we did. True, in my experience. If your child has problems, you will be faulted for your child rearing practices, whatever they were. If you were strict, you will be told that your child has been affected by your harshness. If you were permissive, you will be accused of being too indulgent. If you were permissive, you will be accused of being too indulgent. If you were permissive, you will be accused of being too... It says that twice. If you were relatively democratic, you might be considered wishy-washy or even indifferent. Worst of all, you might be tagged as inconsistent, something we are all guilty of to an extent. Psychology always has a clever theory about any bit of behavior and offers an explanation, but only after the fact. There's the old line that if a patient arrives late for his psychiatric appointment, he's resistant. If he's early, he's anxious. If he's on time, he's compulsive. Although social scientists are sincere in trying to explain why we are the way we are, they are often incorrect. In varying degrees, all human beings suffer trauma as they grow up. But if a domineering mother